Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Lilo N Stitches. I am your yarn host Jennifer. Today we're going to make a purse. We're going to make it together. It's going to be fun. I'm going to make a much smaller version of this purse than what you see here for time constraints and for the purpose of this tutorial. However, you can make this purse as big or as little as you want it. This is my first sample. This yarn actually was some yarn I got from Universal, which was Fibra Natura ribbon yarn. So you could use the new ribbon yarn that Premier has out called Premier Yarns Ribbon, and you will get this nice thick sturdy base for your yarn. But also the sides here is just a cone of Premier Everyday. There is a ladybug on my yarn. And sad to say she's dead, but that's okay. This yarn was kept right by the open window, so that explains why there's a ladybug in there. So this is just made with a cone of Premier Home Cotton. So to make this bag, you need a minimum of, now I'm going to say, I used a cone of cotton. You could absolutely use a cone of cotton. If you got cone of cotton laying around, if you want to buy a cone of cotton, you can do that. I'm going to say, because I'm not certain how many of the small balls of the Premier Home Cotton it would take, I would say have a minimum of 3 balls on hand just to make sure that you have enough. I used a cotton cone for this. So this is the Premier Home Cotton in a cone form in the color denim, I believe. I also used a cone for this version of the bag, and this is, I think, natural or something like that. I will have these linked below. This is beautiful. I love this colorway of yarn. You could use this colorway, but also you could use the Hipster Cotton, which I made this one out of. This is the Hipster Cotton in the color, I think this is Summer Dream. I will also link this yarn below. I'm tangling on other things that are on my desk. And this is a super easy crochet pattern, but I'm also going to show you how to line it. So there's going to be a slight sewing tutorial to this. If you want to make solid grannies for the inside and just make a double layer and line it that way, you can. But I'm going to show you how to line this with fabric. Now I'm going to give you fair warning, I am not a seamstress. This is a very simple, very rustic style to make a liner. It is not perfect. It is the best that I can figure out how to do it. And I'm going to teach you how to sew this up. Actually, I didn't sew the pieces together at all. I crocheted them. So to make this pattern, very easy. It's 3 granny squares. You can make the granny squares as big or as little as you want them. I'm going to make them much smaller. I'm going to make a miniature size purse and probably give that to my niece. But yeah, this purse is very pretty. It's very boho chic. And I will, of course, pop up pictures of the whole bag since we're limited to space right here. You can't see. I also made 2 different style handles, but I'm going to show you how to make the very basic half double crochet handle because it tends to be the most sturdy. I also made a handle out of granny stitch. I don't like this style, so we're not going to be doing that. But I'm going to show you a very basic granny stitch or a granny square. I'm going to show you how to piece the pieces together and to line this bag. So what you need for this tutorial is a cone of cotton or 3 balls of the small balls of Home and Cotton or 2 balls of the Hipster is what it took to make this size bag. And this is a pretty good size bag. I mean, I have pretty decent size hands. This is a pretty good size bag. This is bigger than a lot of my purses. You could use this for a project bag, you could use it for a purse, you could use it pretty much for anything that you want. Take this to the farmer's market with you. Because it's lined with fabric, it will not stretch out as much. So you could put like some bananas in here and some grapes or whatever from the farmer's market, or some apples or whatever. So you need not only the yarn, but you also are going to need fabric to line it. Now I'm going to say this. You can get fabric on discount a lot of places. This fabric came from a reuse store. I have gotten fabric for pretty cheap at thrift stores. You just need to wash it first because a lot of times they smell like they've been hanging around dust a while. But this is from a reuse store. You can also get squares of fabric from the Dollar Tree. And let me grab those and I'll show you what I mean. So for $1.25 you can get those. These are fat quarters. These are not a full yard. I suggest having a yard or having 3 of these fat quarters from the $1.25 tree. That's what this is. Because we are going to cut the fabric into the size granny squares and sew them together exactly like we sewed the bag together. So you need 3 squares the size of your granny square. So 3 fat quarters from $1.25 tree, or even Walmart has these for $1 sometimes. You just need 3 of these, okay? Or a yard of fabric from wherever you get your discount fabric from. Thrift store, reuse store, $1.25 tree. If you want fancier, more expensive fabric, you can get it from Joann's or wherever you get your fabric from. But it doesn't have to be expensive. The $1.25 tree fabric works just fine. So, most of my fabric is not full price for that reason. And what we need is our cotton, and we need a hook. The hook size that we use does not matter. It does not matter whatsoever. You just need a hook size that kind of goes with the yarn that you're using. So I'm going to use a 4.5 millimeter hook, which is just my Omi hook, my favorite hook of all of the hooks. You can use 5 millimeter. The size of the hook is just going to change how big the holes are in the fabric, but since we're lining it, it does not really matter how big the holes are. Where is... Ooh, I did not like that noise. Now the main problem with using a cone is I will often set the cone on the floor between my legs so that when I'm pulling yarn off of it, it's pulling straight up and away from the cone. So that's what we're going to do. That just helps, and I pull out a big section to start with so that I'm not pulling out later on. Now, we're just going to make some granny squares. So I'm going to zoom you guys in so you can see what my hands are doing. And hopefully I can stay on camera. So, if you know how to make a granny square, you don't need to watch this part of the tutorial. And like I said, you can make the granny square as big or small as you want. I am going to make a small version of this purse, doll size, if you will. I should have probably left the purses over here. I did not count or measure the rows on any of these. So, this is the center row of my granny. So for the hipster one, I did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I did 12 rows of granny for the hipster. For the blue jean, I did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Nope, I did 9 rows. That's the inside lining for the hipster, or the blue jean bag. And then for this one, I did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I did 9 rows again with the white one. So 9, it doesn't matter how many rows. It depends on how big you want your bag. 9 rows, 12 rows. It will depend on the thickness of the yarn. The hipster seemed to be a little bit thinner than the other cotton on the cone. So I did more rows. I did 12 rows to get a smaller bag. So just use your best judgment of how big you think you want your bag. Like I said, this is going to be a miniature version. But if you want to make this bigger, do like 10 rows of a granny square with like a 4 or a 5 millimeter hook. So to start with, I'm going to do magic circle. And I know this confuses a lot of people. Magic circle doesn't have to be hard. You fold it like you're going to make a slip knot. So you make like an awareness ribbon. The short tail should be on the bottom. Okay, you pinch it at the X. You go in top to bottom and you pull up a loop. Okay, and then you chain 1. If I can chain 1. So now we have our magic loop. We're just going to work over the top of the tail and the circle all the way around. So we're going to chain 2 more from that first chain, because that's going to be our chain 3. And then we're going to put 2 double crochet next to it. I might have to switch hooks. This hook is trying to snag. I'm going to chain 2, 1, 2, put 3 double crochet, which counts as a granny cluster. I'm going to chain 2, 1, 2. I'm going to put a granny cluster, which is 3 double crochet. I'm going to chain 2 and put 1 more granny cluster, so that's 3 double crochet. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to chain 2. Okay, this is what it should look like. You grab your little tail, and you pull it really tight as you can get it without breaking the yarn. Don't break the yarn. Okay, so this is what it should look like. You should have 4 granny clusters and then 4 chain 2 spaces. We're going to go to the top of the chain 3 and we are going to slip stitch to join, but slip stitch over the top of your tail. Okay, because we're going to work over the top of that right now. Flip the tail back over this way and flip we're going to go back the other direction now. Okay, so we're going to slip stitch into the chain 2 space. And if you make granny squares any other way than this, it is perfectly fine. I got a question the other day. They asked if there should be a chain space between the granny chains or not on the sides. And I said, doesn't matter. It does not matter. It does not change the way your granny square looks. So in each one of these chain spaces, we're going to put a corner. So this is going to be the corners of our squares. So we're going to put a granny cluster, chain 2, granny cluster. Okay, so we're going to start with a chain 3 and put 2 more double crochets, and that will make it a granny cluster. We're going to chain 2, and in that same space, we're going to put another granny cluster, which equals 3 double crochets. And I'm working right over the top of that tail, so it's less to weave in later. Now, this next part is up to you. If you want to put a chain 1 here, you can. If you don't want to put a chain 1 here, it doesn't matter. The only difference is, and I've seen lots of tutorials that put a chain 1, I've seen lots of tutorials that don't put a chain 1. It is going to change how big your spaces are. If you want bigger holes in your work, put a chain 1 here. If you want them a little bit tighter, don't put a chain 1. It doesn't matter. So I'm not going to put a chain 1. I'm just going to go to this next corner and I'm going to put another corner, which is a granny cluster, chain 2, granny cluster. So 3 double crochet, 3 double crochet, chain 2, oops, and 3 double crochet. That's our corner. Now if you put a chain 1 here, you're going to need to put another chain 1 there. If you didn't, it does not matter. Just whatever you do here, just continue doing. I'm still not putting a chain 1 there, but if you want to put a chain 1 there, put a chain 1 there. So I'm doing the next corner. We're going to put another corner block in, which is the granny cluster, chain 2, granny cluster, or 3 double crochet, chain 2, 3 double crochet. We finish that corner, we're going to go to that next corner, double crochet, or granny cluster, chain 2, granny cluster, 3 double crochet, chain 2, 3 double crochet. Whoop. Pulled out one of my chains. Sometimes, and I'm noticing with this hook is not meshing up with this yarn real well. This hook tends to like acrylic yarn better, so I think when I finish this row I'm going to grab a different hook. So I did my corner, and then I'm going to connect it over here with a slip stitch to that first chain 3. So now this is what we have. We have the corners, which are chain 2s, and we have spaces in the center of our stitches. I'm going to grab a different hook. Sometimes metal works better with cotton. out. Now we are going to flip our work. We are going to slip stitch into this hole. Slip stitch in here. So now we're working out of the center space that's not actually a chain anything. I'm going to chain 3 and then put 2 more double crochet in here. That counts as a granny cluster. If you know how to make a granny cluster already, or a granny square, you can do this on your own. You gotta watch the tutorial. So we got our granny cluster in the center. Now we're in the corner, so we need to put a corner in. So we need to do a granny cluster, chain 2, granny cluster. Otherwise known as 3 double crochet, chain 2, 3 double crochet. 1, 2, 3 double crochet. Now we're in that center stitch, or non-stitch, the opening. I'm gonna put a granny cluster in there. 2, 3 double crochet. Now we're back to a corner, so we need to put a corner in, which is granny cluster, chain 2, granny cluster, 3 double crochet, chain 2. If you're having a hard time following me because I'm going fast, the reason I'm going fast is because a lot of you already know how to make a granny cluster or a granny square. You can always change the speed of this video to go slower. Alright, my battery died. It's like I was saying, you could slow this video down if you have never made a granny square and do that. So what we're going to do is in each one of these holes, we're going to put a granny cluster, and in the corner, we're going to put a corner. And we're just going to keep doing that until we get the size square or block that we want. And you need to make 3 of these. So if you're using the Hipster yarn, what I did with the Hipster yarn, I'm in the corner, so I'm making a corner block. So cluster, chain 2 cluster. If you're doing a self-striping yarn or the Hipster yarn, and you don't have to use cotton if you don't want to use cotton. I just feel like cotton is more appropriate for bags. I color controlled the Hipster yarn, but because this is a variegated, I don't need to color control it. I color controlled the variegated so that the centers were all a lighter color and then graduated out to a darker color, just so that it was more symmetrical, more pretty looking. You, of course, don't have to do that. I chose to do that with the Hipster, and it took me 2 balls of the Hipster, 2 skeins of the Hipster to make that purse. I think it's 12 rows. And doing all of the handle and the sewing and all that. Oh, the crochet. I crocheted the pieces together. I didn't sew them. So we got around. We did our last corner piece. We're going to slip stitch to join in the top of the chain 3 that we started the row in. We're going to turn our work over again. And we are going to slip stitch into this hole. And the reason that we are working back and forth, so work this side and then turn it and then work that side, is because when you do granny squares and you don't rotate it back around, a lot of times you will have like a jog line to where you can see where you ended the row, and also the edges will sometimes twist to where it will be more shaped like that instead of a square. So we don't want a rhombus, we want a square. So that's why I rotate and turn and rotate. And that also means that there's not a front side and a back side. There's no right side and a wrong side because we're working back and forth instead of just continually in the round. But of course, if you want to continue it in the round, you can do that too. So we're going to chain 3 to start the row. And now, if we look at the square, we have an opening here, an opening here, and then the 2 corners. So every time you have one of these openings, you're going to put a granny cluster, and every time you're in the corner, you're going to put the cluster, chain 2 cluster. And that will keep the square being square. So now we have 2 clusters, 2 clusters, 2 clusters, and 4 squares. So we're chaining 3 and we're going to put 2 more double crochet to make a cluster. And then we're going to go into the corner and make a corner, which is cluster, chain 2 cluster. Chain 2. My stomach is pushing on the yarn, so it's not pulling as freely where I set it on the floor. Cluster. Go to that next opening and put a cluster. If you already know how to do this, you can continue on. You can pause the video and come back to later. You need 3 squares that are the same size. So if you do a square that's 12 rows the first time, you need to make 2 more that are 12 rows. If you make it 10 rows, they all need to be 10 rows. The squares need to all be the same size. But because I'm making a miniature version of this for time constraints of a tutorial, we're going to make a mini version of this. And of course, if you have littles, if you have babies, if you have grandchildren, and they like little purses, you could make this much smaller, like 7 rows or 5 rows for the littles, or you can make them real small for their dolls to have a matching purse. Like, you can make this purse as large or as small as you want it. And this purse is very, from what I have been told, this purse design is very good for teenagers and young ladies because this is the style right now. And everything that is old is new again. So they like the style of the crochet bags. I have been told by several teenagers now that these bags would be excellent for them. That they like the design of it. That it's not granny style crochet. That it's more hip. It's more boho chic. Was that 2 chains? No, that was 1. 1, 2. I really like this color. I bought a lot of cones of cotton, and back in the day, Premier used to have also giant skeins of cotton, which I have lots of because they clearanced it out when they discontinued it. So I have so much cotton, and you can only make so many dish towels and hand cloths and washcloths and face cloths and, you know, kitchen type stuff. And so when I used this to make the Boho Chic bag and it took about 3/4 of my cone, I was like, ooh, this is a really good use for the big things of cotton. And then when it took 2 of the Hipster, I was like, okay, I still have some Hipster over there that I have been wanting to work with, and I couldn't think of what to make with the Hipster Cotton because I already made a wearable. I made that shirt, the Spring Fling t-shirt. So I was like, okay, this is a good use for these yarns. And like I said, you don't have to use cotton. You can use whatever pretty yarn you want to use. And that ribbon, the new ribbon yarn that Premier Yarn has out, would be really perfect for a really durable bag. So if you're making yourself a bag and you don't care that it's like heavier or whatever, I would try that new ribbon yarn. Because that would be perfect. Because that first jean bag, part of that was ribbon yarn, and I wish I had more of that specific ribbon yarn because I just really, really like the way it came out. Okay, so I'm going to slip stitch. How many rows do I have? I'm kind of aiming for 5 because, like I said, I'm making a small version of this purse. 2, 3, 4, 1 more row. So I slipped a join. I'm going to rotate again, slip stitch into the opening there, chain 3, put 2 more double crochet in there. I'm going to stop after this 5th row, and then I'm going to pause. Actually, no, I'm not going to pause. Because when we get to the end of this, what I like to do to make this sewing together a lot easier is I like to put a border of single crochet around it. So when I finish this 5th row, I am going to put a single crochet border around this. It just will make our life easier when we're crocheting these pieces together. But you make this purse as big as you want. I suggest between 9 and 12 rows, depending on how thick your yarn is and how big your hook is. 8 rows would even probably be really good for a smaller bag. And of course, if you want to make this a big giant bag, you can go 15 rows. It's all up to you. It's your bag. So just keep making your granny square. And to make my life easier, I could have very easily wound this off of the cone into a cake. But I didn't have time to do that this morning before I started the tutorial. Or wind it into a ball even and put it in my yarnet so the ball stays where I tell it to go. And it's easier to feed the yarn off of it that way. These cones are a little bit cumbersome to work off of unless you're in the right environment. Now if I'm sitting on the couch and the cone is between my feet on the floor, I have no problem, but because I'm leaning over a desk and my stomach is pushing on the desk where the thread is coming through, I can't pull the yarn as freely up here. You also, it doesn't have to be like a 4-weight or a 5-weight yarn. You can make this purse out of any weight yarn. It's obviously just going to change the size of it. So you just keep making the granny square until it looks about the size you want your purse to be. And you guys know me. If you've been around for any length of time, you know that I do not like making the same project over and over again. Like when I'm done with a pattern, I'm usually done with the pattern. I do not make seconds. I don't make thirds unless I really, really love the pattern. This is one of those things where there's 3 purses there because I really had fun. This is just granny squares. It's so easy and mindless. And I don't even really have to look at my hands when I'm making granny squares because I can go along and I can feel where the hole is. And I know where I'm supposed to stick my hook without really even looking at it. Because you can feel there's a hole there. There's a hole there. Like, you know, I'll pull up some more yarn. Just look down every once in a while. This is actually one of the patterns that you can make while watching TV and actually be able to see the show that you're watching and know what the characters look like. And if you're a knitter or a crocheter, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You watch a whole season of a show and not have a clue what they look like. Because you're looking at your hands. Alright, so I got all the way around. I'm going to slip stitch to that third once again. Now, I'm just going to chain 1 and I'm going to continue in the same direction. I am going to go around in every stitch and put a single crochet. So because each cluster has 3 stitches, I'm going to put 3 single crochet, 3 single crochet, 3 single crochet, and then put 2 in the corner and then 3 single crochet. Now, if you put a chain 1 space in between your cluster, you're going to need to add another single crochet in there. But because I didn't, I don't need to do that. So I'm going to put single crochets all the way around. Each cluster should have 3 single crochets. And then when you get around to the other side, just slip stitch to join and cut your yarn. And then when you're in the corners, put 2 single crochet. We're just doing this so that it's easier when we sew these squares together to see where our stitches are, to single crochet the single crochets together, than trying to figure out where our stitches are supposed to line up with the clusters. So that's all we're doing. Just trying to make our life easier for the future. Now this is going to be, well, it doesn't matter. I was going to say this is going to be the bottom of the purse, but when you're done with these 3, it doesn't matter which one's the bottom. You take the 2 prettiest ones and you put them on the side because those are going to be the most visibly seen, and then you put whatever one on the bottom. Although these variegated yarns are all going to look really similar, but if you're using like a striped yarn or something, you want the 2 that look the closest to each other to be on the sides of the purse. and the one with the most differences to be on the bottom. I got a song stuck in my head and it keeps playing over and over again. And I ain't even listened to the song in like several days. I've been listening to all kinds of music lately. Just random music. Been listening to rock and roll from the 70s. I wasn't born until 79. That's mostly Juju's fault. She has discovered a whole new genre of music from either TikTok or Stranger Things. So she's listening to more rock music. I've been listening to 90s music because that was when I was a teenager. Where most of my music memories were formed was in the 90s. But at the same time, my parents listened to all kinds. My dad listened to all kinds of music. My dad loved music. He loved Motown. He loved 70s rock. He just loved music. He would sing all the time. Alright, so now we got to back around to this front. We are going to slip stitch to join. I need to find my scissors because my daughter took off with them yesterday because I needed to cut her hair. These are not my good scissors. These are my kitchen scissors. Alright, so fasten that off. Now you need to make 2 more of these. When you have made 2 more of these, we're going to come back. I'm going to make 2 more off camera. Make them the same size. We're going to come back and I'm going to show you how to assemble the purse. And then I will show you how to line this bag if you choose to line it. You do not have to line it. You can line it with solid crochet panels. Like if you just made solid squares, you could absolutely do that. But we will come back and discuss that after we've made our 3rd panel. Alright, so I finished my mini squares. My mini squares. Of course, your squares are going to be a lot larger than this because you're making a full-size purse and I'm making a sample so that you guys can see how to make this. So what I did for the big version of the purse is I took the granny square and my fabric is folded over so that I'm actually cutting 2 squares at once just to make my life easier. And actually I should probably be cutting on the raw edge. Now, you're obviously going to want to cut off this extra material that has the fabric information on it. So we're going to ignore that that exists. And this has, because I did buy this at a reuse shop, it has been washed. So there's lots of frayed ends. If you want to wash your fabric ahead of time to pre-shrink it, because some cotton fabrics will actually shrink when you wash them, you can go ahead and do this, but this has already been pre-washed. So you want to lay your granny square on the fabric and stretch it out as much as you can, because this material does stretch, and it will stretch when you're sewing it. So you want to make sure that you're not cutting the fabric too small. So just pull it and stretch it out, and then cut, leaving room all the way around the edge. And actually I should probably use a little more room than that so that we can fold this under when we sew it. Okay, so you want to make it about a 1/2 inch bigger all the way around on all sides than the actual square, and then just cut out. And I really need different scissors than this because these are terrible, terrible scissors. These are my kitchen utility drawer scissors. Just make the square, like I said, just a little bit bigger on the outside so you can fold over the edges when you sew. You need 3 squares of this size. So because I folded that in half, I actually have 2 pieces cut at one time. And then I'm going to open this up because now I only need a third piece. And this doesn't have to be perfect. I don't measure anything. I don't pin things down. I kind of just cheat my way through a lot of stuff when I'm making stuff like this. Now you can get more precise. You can watch sewing videos and all that if you want. But that's not how I do things. I kind of make it work for me in the less amount of work that I can do without, you know, making this a stressful thing. It doesn't have to be perfect. I'm not selling this in a shop. It's very clear if I was to sell this, like on Etsy or something, I am always honest with my things saying, hey, it ain't perfect. It's not going to be perfect. Now, there are a couple of different ways that you can sew this together. You can hand sew this. I'm going to try to figure a way to configure this camera so you guys can see me sewing on my machine while I do this, because I'm using my machine. I'm not hand sewing this. You can absolutely hand sew this. When we assemble the purse, we are actually going to be, these pieces are all going to be folded in triangles. The purse is going to look like this. Okay. So what we need to do, see, I just folded them so that they're triangles. This is going to be the shape of the purse. This is the shape we need the liner to be as well. Now what you can do is put the material, fold over the piece, and sew it to the square. Sew up this side and sew up this side. Okay, you can do it that way. The first time I did it, it worked out okay, and then the second time I tried that, it didn't work out so well. So you're gonna be sewing these two ends, because these two ends are gonna attach here and here. Okay, I hope I'm explaining this right. What I'm going to do for this tutorial, and what I suggest for you, is this is the easiest way it was for me. It made the liner is not perfect, doesn't have to be. I put the pretty side of the fabric together facing each other, okay, and then just run a line here and here, okay. So just two sides, run a line. You can do this hand sewing, you can do this with your machine, okay. And when that's all done, we're going to come by and attach this one, but one thing at a time. Just one thing at a time, because I don't want to give you too many details and confuse you. Okay, so put two of your squares together, pretty side facing each other. So this is the pretty side of the fabric. That's the back side of the fabric. And I am going to run a line along two corners. All right, let me reconfigure my camera and set up my machine, and we'll go from there. Now, before I start this machine up, I'm going to tell you that it's loud. And I'm hoping that I can get that taken care of in post-production so it's not so loud for you. And I will stop my pedal when I need to say something. I also have never sewed on camera before. This is new to me. So I'm also not a professional seamstress. I'm not even a quilter. I have basic sewing skills that were given to me from my aunt. Now, I am going to... There are lines on the sides of my pedal right here that I'm going to use because they're guides for measurement. If you don't have a machine and you're doing this by hand, just kind of like eyeball. You're going to want to come in about a ½ inch from the edge, just because that's going to be on the inside of the bag. What I'm using is, this says, I can't even see what that says. It says there's a 20 there, so I'm going to use that line as a measurement, and I am going to start the stitch by going forward, reverse it a little bit just to make sure it does not unravel, and I'm going extra slow so that you guys can hear me so my machine's not too loud. I'm just running a straight stitch all the way along that side. When we get to the edge, I push the needle down into the fabric to hold it. I lift up my foot and I turn it. And we wanted it about the 20 mark here, so about a ½ inch again. And then we are just going to run a line. And the line's not perfect. Like I said, I'm not a seamstress. And I'm going extra slow for the camera. Got to the end, reverse it a little bit just to lock in the stitches. Pull it off and cut it. Now, if you don't have a machine, just do a straight stitch all the way across here and across this side. Now, let's see if I can back this up enough for you to see what I'm doing next. Now I got my third piece, okay? We are going to open the pretty side. See, now it looks kind of like a pocket, okay? Now, I'm going to take this one, and it doesn't matter if I put pretty side to this side or pretty side to that side, but I'm going to go to the top side because it's closest. And I'm using the white side up here so that I don't have to cut that off later because it will be on the inside of the bag. And now, see, this is the pocket part. We're sewed here and here. Now we're going to connect the square to this side and this side. And this part that has sewing all the way around the 4 sides is going to be the bottom of the bag. Okay. So we're going to line this piece up. And this is the bottom piece. So we're going to, and I know this is confusing. We got to try to ignore this piece over here because we're not sewing anything to that. So we'll bring it back in. And if you need to look at the bottom side and sew from this point of view, so you don't get confused, you can. You could pin this if you want. We're going to sew up the other 2 sides of that middle section. And once again, we want to make sure that we are in enough that we have that edge there. Make sure our fabrics are lined up. And I'm just going to run a bead. The side. We'll stop, put our needle in, turn. That just helps us keep our fabric in place. Make sure that this is lined up. And then we're going to run up this corner. And we're working back towards the middle where that extra piece is that we didn't connect to this piece at all. Alright. Take that out. Trim it. Now, when it opens up, it should look like this. Okay. So just like we connected, or we're going to connect the crochet squares this size, I want this to look like this so it will fit inside of the bag. Okay, so now we have to move back to the crochet part. And another way that we can connect this is we can connect this here first, but I'd rather connect the squares together, and then we're going to drop this in and we're going to sew it once this part is formed together. And this looks like it's too big, so we're going to have to like fold this down. We'll get to that part when we get to that part. All right, let me go back to a different camera angle. This is probably the hardest tutorial I've ever done because I'm trying to figure out how best to explain this to you guys, and I'm not real good at the sewing aspect. So now we're going to connect the triangles just like we did the bags. So we're going to stretch them out, give them a good stretch. Don't be afraid to manhandle it. This is cotton. This can take a little manhandling. All right, now put 2 sides together, and because we work back and forth, there's not a good side and a bad side to these. There's not a right and a wrong. Let me turn up my light. we are going to sew up 2 sides here, just like we did the fabric. So I am going to create a slip knot, go in the corner, and in the corner of the stitches there's 2 single crochets. You want the second single crochet in the corner, and you want to match it up with the second single crochet in the bottom square that's there, because we're going to single crochet these together. So you pull up a loop and we are going to create our first single crochet, and you're going to do this all the way across this side and this side. We're going to single crochet it together. The reason I choose single crochet instead of sewing it together or doing slip stitches is because I like the way that the ridge looks when the squares are connected this way. I think that it's pretty, and I like the extra detail that it gives to the bag. It separates the squares a little more. It lets you know that there's an extra detail there. It adds visual beauty to the bag. So just make sure that you are lining up your stitches correctly. This is why we put the single crochets in, so that it's easier for us to line up the stitches. So we're not skipping stitches, or we're not putting too many stitches in one square and not the other square. And it just helps to keep everything lined up because the single crochets are there for us. A single crochet. And pull some more yarn off brought my cone up on the table for ease of access. We're almost to the edge of this one. Line up your stitches. And just keep going all the way around that other side. So just like with the fabric, we are going to sew up or crochet up 2 sides of these squares together. This is like the easiest part of the bag right here. Aside from the granny squares, but like this part is like real easy. I'm gonna cut my tails a little bit shorter because I'm just gonna crochet over the top of them. You can weave them in later if you want, but it's just a bag. Like if they come out, I can weave them out, but they usually don't come out. And I crochet over the top of them. Whoop. And when we get to the end of this corner, we are not going to cut our yarn. We're going to keep it attached. And I'll show you why. So we got to the corner, and once again, because we're in this corner, there's 2 single crochets in that stitch. Crochet to the first of those 2, but not in the second. And then when you open it up, it looks like a pocket. Okay. Now, we are going to, and it doesn't matter what side you attach this third one to. You attach it in there, and now, if we flip it over, we crocheted up this side. Now we're going to crochet up this side to the other square. Okay, so fold this one open, leave it there. And then over here, we are going to attach in the second of the 2 stitches that are in the chain 2 space, and attach it to this one with a single crochet. And then we're going to single crochet this side and this side. Okay. So the square that's on the bottom will be the bottom of the bag. And it's the only square that will have the joining all the way around 4 sides. Because on either side of the square is going to be the first square or the third square. The one thing you want to make sure is that you're lining up your single crochets so that you don't have, like, your squares are lined up, so you don't have one square that goes out further than the other. And so we're at the corner, so I'm just going to crochet around the corner, single crochet. Now we're on that last side. Almost there. And once again, we have a tail here, so I'm just going to crochet over the top of it. And if you don't want a ridge on here, you could hand sew this together with like any kind of stitch that lays flat. But I really like the look of the ridge on here. I think it's pretty. I think it adds, oh, I missed the tail. Try that again. I like the detail it adds to the purse. We're almost to the corner. One more stitch. Right, now, if you want, you could take that second stitch in the corner and attach it to this corner of the previous one. You can cut and bind off or tie off there. This is what it will look like opened up. What the bag looks like. See how that ridge just adds like a detail to it? It's so pretty. It gives it a little more definition in the purse. That's why I choose to do it that way instead of sewing it, because you could sew it and those panels will be perfectly flat, but I like the ridge detail there. And then what we're going to do next is we're going to insert the liner, which I think I made the liner way too big, but that's okay. That is okay. We got some extra material happening down here. So, and also the cotton bag actually stretches, so you want the liner to be slightly bigger so that when the cotton does stretch, the liner is not too small. So you're going to take put your hand inside the purse. You still want the pretty side on the inside, because that's the side you're going to look at. And push the corners of the fabric into the corners of the purse to line it up. Like that. Okay. Stretch it out. Now, this is the part where you're going to fold down the liner inside the bag. And you're going to fold it down so that we're going to sew the bag to the liner like that. If you need to fold down a good inch, like I did, just fold down a good inch. It's not going to matter. Just fold it down, tuck it in. You pin this down if you need to. All right, fold flat for me. I have way too much fabric there. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Like I said, I take my sewing the same way that I do my crochet. I don't take anything too seriously. I kind of fudge my way through it. And tuck that in. And I'll put a little pin. So that stays where it needs to go. Tuck everything else in. What do I do with the rest of my pins? I know that I have them. Let me grab them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pin at the peaks of the front of the purse and the back of the purse. Just one little pin there to hold it. Try to line up the fabric on the inside as best I can. You can cut off the excess fabric if you have some at this point. I have a lot of excess fabric because I way over measured. And when you sew it to the peak here on the tops where the handle is going to connect to, I go to the second row and pin it there. Down here. Right there. Just put a little pin in there. Just hold it on. Do the same thing on the other corner. This would be so much easier if I didn't have so much extra fabric that I put in here, but it's fine. It's just a tutorial. And like I said, I am not a seamstress. I am not a perfectionist. This would drive a lot of people crazy, but to me, it just doesn't matter. All right, there we go. There we have it. Now, we're just going to run this through the machine. I'm going to have to fix that because it's still poking out a little bit. And what we're going to do is we're just going to run a line along the edge of this, but you don't want, see, this is up too high. You want this down enough because we're still going to run a line across here. We're going to crochet like an extra little detail right here. So you want it down enough so you can still access those stitches. Just make sure all these stitches are accessible. So fold it down enough and you can still access those. Like that. There we go. That's much better. Alright, now let's go back to the machine. Alright. So the best way for me to see the fabric is for me to put the crochet down on the petals like this. This does stretch the crochet out a little bit from the feet grabbing it, and I'm starting at the center where we put that pin. And you could put way more pins in here if you need to. I just don't like using pins. And then we're just going to run a line all the way around the edge. And if you find that your crochet is catching on your feet underneath, just come from the back and pull very even motion. I didn't put my foot down. I didn't put my foot down. Oh, dang it. Yeah. I'm going to leave that part in because that's all part of are learning on here. This is to prove that I am not a perfect person and my tension was off and it didn't want to go. So I'm gonna have to probably lessen our tension a little bit. Try that again. This is actually thicker than the last time. The fabric and the yarn combination is thicker than the last bag I made. So there we go. Now we're cooking with fire. You want to make sure all of your excess fabric and stuff is pushed out of the way so you don't accidentally double do that. This part is actually probably really, really easier doing it by hand, but I just don't want to. Go up and around that corner. Turn your bag. Make sure your fabric is flat and where you want it to go. And I'm just crocheting, or not crocheting, I'm sewing right over the top of those pins I put in there. Because my machine is not gonna, it's not gonna have an issue with my pins. I can pull them out very easily. Need to come in and straighten that. And this is just the way I sew. I fold it over as I go. I hold it down where it needs to be. Nothing is ever perfect. That way I can adjust where I need to. Now a proper sewer is going to tell you, proper seamstress is going to tell you, you have to iron everything, you have to measure, lay it flat, you have to pin it everywhere. I ain't proper. Never said I was proper, never said I was perfect. I just kind of do my own thing. I write my own rules in life. Always been like that. All right, now, come in and try to fix that. Make sure that it's, because it's looking kind of funky. We don't want it to look funky. Me and my crew were drinking Bass Monkey. All right, I'm just fixing it and pulling it a little bit. We're almost back to where we started. Just make sure we're not double sewing on top of anything. Alright, now pull that out and cut it. I have a little cutter on the side of my machine, which I didn't discover until I was watching a machine video somebody else was sewing a long time ago. I was like, that's my machine, why don't I have a cutter? And then I went and looked, I was like, oh, I do have a cutter. Alright, I'm gonna pause. Alright, so we got it. I'm gonna use our hands to push that back down into the corners. Of course your bag is gonna be much larger than mine. We're gonna remove our 4 pins if we can find where they went. There it is. And that's the good thing about having a foam board, is I can just poke it right there in the foam. Oh, where'd you go? Did you come out? Did you guys see that pin come out? It's not there no more. And that was the pin that had the bow on the end. And it's not there anymore. Must have fallen out. I'm sure it will end up in my foot at some point. Yeah, because it's not in there. Well, it's fine. It's fine. Alright. You're going to come back through and remove your strings. But that can also be done at the end. Now, the next part of this bag is you stretch it and get it into place. And because this is cotton, it's going to stretch and really mold into the shape and the size that you want it to be. Just give it a little tug. And the fabric on the inside, even though it looked funky while we were sewing it, when it's opened, it just looks like the inside of a sack. You know? It's very, like, you can still have some stretch room in there when the fabric's, see, look at that. That's pretty. It's not perfect, but it's pretty. So there's our bag. So now, we're going to come back to the yarn. And I'm probably going to have to adjust the camera so you guys are up higher again because I had to lower it for the machine. And I will show you how to do the handle. All right. Put my stick pins back in my stick pin thing. Even though we lost one and we don't know where it's at, it's fine. Oh, there it is. I found it. It's right here. Good deal. We found them all. We're not going to get poked later. All right. You guys still here? You still paying attention? Oh, man. Okay, so now what I'm going to do, just as an extra detail, is I'm going to run half double crochets around the whole thing. And then we're going to attach our handle. Okay. So I like to attach somewhere towards the center because then I can control, like right here, there's kind of a loose stitch. So I can crochet these together and I can create more of a uniform line there. So I like to start in the middle. I'm going to slip stitch to join. Once again, I'm going to chain one and put a half double crochet in there, and I'm going to chain over my tail. I'm going to stitch over my tail. So let's see who's texting. That's an email. I can wait. All right, now, because this is kind of a loose stitch, I'm going to go down further. I'm going to put a half double, but I'm going to go into a stitch below just to create more uniformity right there. And then I'm going to continue half double crocheting all the way around in the single crochets that are already there. And that's another good thing is we did the setup work so that we could see those stitches a lot easier. And we can just put half doubles in each stitch all the way up, over, around, and back around. And this is just an extra detail to give it a little, you know, a little nicer edge. I mean, you could absolutely leave the half double crochets the way, or the single crochets where they are that are already there. You could do that. You don't have to do this step. This is just how I did it. You could put a picot border on here if you want, but keep in mind at the tops of those peaks we're going to put our handles. So I know that at some point I'm probably going to get criticism on my tutorial about you're doing something the hard way, you're doing something wrong, you didn't sew like I'm supposed to sew. That's how I do it. I kind of march to the beat of my own drum. I do things the way that I find them to be enjoyable for me. I don't like sewing when I have to do all those extra steps. I don't want to bring out the iron. I don't want to do that. I don't want to iron this stuff. I barely want to pre-wash it. I just want to work with it and make something pretty and move on to the next project. Because that's what brings me joy. So I'm already up and over the edge. So I can flip it over. And there's lots of detail work that you could do to this purse to make it unique and make it yours. You could add a whole line of fringe along the bottom here. You could even add fringe along the single crochets where we attach it together if you like fringe. I don't like messing with no dang fringe. I like the way it looks, but I don't want to mess with it. My mom used to put fringe on everything, and when it washed up, like the edges became like pilly and knotty, and like you almost had to brush the fringe, and I hated that. I hated that. She also used, like, I'm sure she used Wind Tuck and Super Saver and all that, the cheapest yarn that was on the market at the time. She couldn't afford the nice stuff, and there wasn't a whole lot of options back then for us. So once again, I'm to the middle, and I'm going to just try to bring that more. This side looks better than the other side, but I'm going to put one stitch in the middle here and try to bring this more together. I really need to turn my phone off. Getting spam emails right now. So I did that last stitch here, and then I'm going to put one down a ways in here if I can get my hook in. Come on, you can do it, Jen. There we go. That's the bad thing about this hook is it has a really rounded tip. Makes it impossible to get into tight stitches. And I'm going to go back up to this other side and put a half double. Continue up this side, up and around. Now the handle is another very personal thing. Some people want their purse to hang directly under their armpit for security reasons. They feel like it's more tight and secure and nobody's going to steal it when it's under their armpit. So the length of your handle is going to be entirely up to you. Some people like their purse hanging down towards their hip. So you're going to want to measure that. And I just read something today in my comments that someone suggested lining the handle as well. If you want to line the handle, it stops it from stretching out so much. I'm not going to do that, but that's a really good idea. If you're going to line the handle, just cut a panel of fabric the same size as your slightly bigger than the handle strip we're going to crochet. And so, just like we did with this, fold over the ends and just run a bead, a yarn, a line around the outside to sew the fabric onto the handle, and leave enough room on the ends of the handle to connect it here and connect it there. And then you're good to go. But make the handle, like, make it a little bit and then measure how it would fit on your body and where the purse would lay. And keep in mind that if you don't line the handle can stretch out. So just keep that all in mind. The fabric will stop it from stretching. I just never thought to do that. Thought it was kind of a brilliant idea. All right. One more half double. Then we slip stitch to join. Cut. Now, we're going to do the handle. You can also, another detail that you can do to this purse, to add to this purse, I'm just stretching those out a little bit. See how good that stretches out? You can add tassel here. I'm going to actually show you my jean purse because that's what I did. And I love it. I put a little tassel right there. And it just is the cutest little detail. I didn't do it to the other two purses, but because this is ribbon yarn, I just thought it looked extra nice. And this gives me my mom vibes so much from when I was a little girl. And I think it's the cutest little tassel. And it's only on one side, so you could do that as well. Another detail. So you could do fringe, you could do a tassel. You can zhuzh this up any old way that you want. This is a cute little purse. This could be cute for my niece if I decide to give it to her. The problem is not me wanting to give her all the things. It's a matter of actually getting to the post office and mailing stuff out. Because I kid you not, I had a box under my desk for 1.5 years I meant to send out to her and I never did. So now we're going to make the handle. So we're going to chain 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And we are going to do half double crochet. So we should have 5. We're going to half double crochet in the very next stitch. So we should have 5 half doubles. 2, 3, 4, 5. Chain 1 turn. 5 half doubles in this row. And you're going to do this back and forth, 5 half doubles. If you want a little more strength in this, you can do single crochets. It will give you less stretch than the half doubles. I just like the way half doubles work up. Make sure that you have 5 stitches in every row. Chain 1 turn, half double in that same first stitch. 5 half doubles in every row until you get the length that you want. And I will meet you back to sew this on. Man, we are plowing through the batteries today. I am on my 3rd camera battery, which means I'm out of batteries, so I have to recharge them. Alright, so I just made a little quick strap. I probably should have left that tail longer, and thinking about too many things at once. That's fine. I need to grab my yarn needles. Now you could very well crochet this strap on if you wanted, and you would still have a ridge like that on the edge where you crocheted the metal ones are the ones I prefer. Actually, that's the one I want. What was I saying? You could crochet these on like we'd crochet these together. You would just have a ridge there. I like the way it looks sewed on because it looks prettier to me. Now if I would have left this tail longer, I could have just used that tail to sew this on, but I did not because I just didn't. So what we're gonna do, thread our needle, and this is the way I attach my yarn, is I create a slip knot on this end. And then what we're gonna do is I'm going to use the slip knot to attach my yarn to the project. I'll show you that in a minute. Take the peak where the handles are gonna be, okay, and take your strap, put it inside the bag, and line it up. Now see where this top peak is, where this opening is here? We need to take the top 5 stitches here. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And we are going to attach our yarn here. Pull that slip knot tight. That's how I attach my yarn here. We obviously are going to have some ends to weave in, but that's fine. Take your strap and line up the 5 stitches with the 5 stitches that are at the top of the peak here. And I am just going to go and weave. I'm not going to weave, I'm going to sew. I'm going to put the tails this way so they're kind of in where we're stitching. We're going to stitch over the top of them. And I'm just going to do a real simple stitch where I go front to back, over the top of the tails, and then go to the next stitch and go front to back. So it creates like a loop that goes continuously through and around. There's other stitches you can use too. You don't have to do this stitch. What the heck? I'm having difficulties today. Like I said, I'm already through 3 videos in one day. What time is it? It's only 2 o'clock and I've done 3 videos, including this tutorial. I am like killing it. Killing all my batteries. My brain is starting to get tired. Luckily for me, my daughter's going to be cooking dinner tonight, so I ain't got to worry about that. But I do have to let her know that around 3 o'clock she needs to start cooking because everybody's home at 4:30 and they're all hungry. Alright, so, and you turn it around, and you can go back and forth a couple of times just to make sure, because this is going to be your strap. You want your strap to be completely tight. You want it to be secure. You don't want to worry about losing your bag when you're carrying something heavy in it. So just really make sure that you secure this. I'm going to cut those off. You can weave those back through later on, but I just don't care because this is going to be for a little kid. I'm going to weave it through again. Now, we're at the end. I'm going to open up our handle, and you can sew this on whatever way you see fit. Whatever way. I'm going to give an extra couple of ties around this extra stitch down here and knot it off. Go to the inside of the bag and weave it in. One of the banes of my existence is weaving in my ends. just hate it so much. I don't know why, because I don't mind hand sewing stuff. I just hate finishing it off and weaving in my ends. And then do the same thing to the other handle. And you have a cute little bag that we're gonna pretend is done, because I'm over it. I'm over it. Isn't that cute? And you can make the handle as long as you want to meet your needs, whatever your needs are. You can add, like I said, you can add a little tassel here, you can add fringe here or along the bottom. You can even add it up here towards the top if you want. Really make this your own. You could put a really pretty brooch or a pin right here, which I just got suggested I could do. I got my cool little pin here that hasn't gone up to my room yet. You can add, skate on, girl. You can make this your own bag. Do what you need to do to make this however you want. Just add some details that are significantly you, things that scream you. And I'm going to sew this up, but I'm not going to do it on camera. And thank you so much for watching this tutorial. And as always, if you make this bag, I want to see your variations. I want to hear about the yarn that you chose for it. I want to hear about the details that you chose to do with it. I want to hear about any differences that you made to your bag that might be like extra cool. Share it with me in the Facebook group. You can tag me on Instagram. Just post it on Instagram and do the @ and my name, Cinnamon Stitches. Or you can email it to me. I like other people seeing my work too, so like, well, my designs. So I like when you guys do it publicly, but I absolutely am fine if you just send it to me in my email and I'm the only one that gets to see it. But I really like when you guys make my things and you show me. This bag is perfect for any, and today, while I'm filming this, I'm getting lots of messages on my video because I showed it today while I'm recording this. I'm getting lots of comments that bag is perfect for teenagers, but it's also perfect for 53-year-olds and it's perfect for 70-year-olds, and like everybody loves this style of bag and they're very excited about it. So you can make little sizes for little kids. Like this is gonna be so cute for my niece. You can make any size you want. You can customize it any way that you want. You can make this. This makes an excellent gift for a birthday, for Christmas, for any holiday, for your favorite people that like to carry handbags, whoever they are. Yeah, I think this is a really fun pattern to do. I'm really enjoying it. And I'm glad that I could do this tutorial for you. And as always, I will see you in the next one. Bye, guys.